All right, so this video is going to be what I use for my clients to reference. So if you're watching this, you're probably a client of mine. These are some basic stretches I want everyone to work on because tight legs lead to a lot of back problems because we're not moving through space with fluidity. And then also being muscle bound, it'll prevent you from growing more muscle tissue. And I mean, it'll prevent you from growing more muscle tissue because you're not able to get a full range of motion without changing your posture, and that increases your risk of injury. But if your hamstrings are tight and it starts pulling on bones and creating different positions than it should, especially on squats and leg presses, it's going to negatively impact your ability to train long term. Those little things add up to where it starts to beat up and degrade your joints. Also, stretching helps relieve tension in the muscles. When your muscles have a lot of tension, that tension transfers into the tendons and creating a lot of joint pain. A lot of people think they have pain in their low back or in their knees because of injuries or use over time. It has more to do with tight muscles. So we're going to break the leg down to 4 simple areas. We got your quads, the front of your thighs. We got your adductors on your inner thighs. We have the back of your thigh, your hamstrings, and then we have your glutes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what I'm doing right here, and I'll turn this way, I recommend a lot of beginners who have poor coordination to have something to brace themselves with so that you're not so worried about your balance to where it affects your ability to stretch. If you have better balance and coordination, you do not need this. So, very basic. It's just a prayer pose. Put your butt into your heels and sit. This is a very basic way to stretch the quads. If you want to create a more advanced version of this stretch, simply put your hands back and keep your shoulders back and push your hips up. Your quads, they connect and help lift the hip, and they also help lift the knee. So we have to extend this muscle through both joints to get as complete of a stretch as possible. But if this is hard for you to do, then you can progress it to where you lay on your back. We can break this into 2 simple stretches. First, we have the prayer pose, and then we have a lunging pose. So this part will put less tension at the lower half of your quad, and you will just push and drive your hips forward into the stretch, keeping an upright posture. You can either put your hands on your knee, you can put your hands on the side of your couch, your bed, whatever you need for balance, and drive the hips forward. You can let your heel come up off the ground to further push your hips, and you'll feel the stretch in the front of your hip. If you put your hands down towards the ground and you start to lean forward into this stretch, because of this forward leaning posture, you're going to start to stretch your hamstring and your adductor, your inner thigh. So, first 2 stretches I recommend for people: prayer for a couple, maybe 10 seconds, and then pushing into a lunging pose. Then push into another lunging pose. 10 seconds each. That's 30 seconds. Do 3 rounds. That should take a minute and a half. Next, we have to get our hamstrings. So a simple hamstring stretch, if you can't do your basic toe touch, extend one leg forward. You can either reach towards your ankle, and if you can, and get your hands to the floor, or you can put your hands on a higher object and slowly lower yourself into that stretch. Once again, 10 seconds. Constant 10 count. Rotate to the next leg. Descend into the stretch. And you're going to do 3 10-second counts on each leg. That should take another minute. So we're at 2.5 minutes, very basic stretching. Then, we really want to directly hit the inner thigh. You're going to keep one knee down, and then you're going to pick one leg and stretch it out to your side. It'll look like this. And then from here, you can either sit back with your weight into your heel. It'll stretch your quad and it'll stretch your inner thigh. Or we can reach towards the foot. And these are both going to stretch your inner thigh. I prefer sitting back and getting my weight on this back leg so that it stretches my quad while it stretches my inner thigh. If you need balance, we can do this here. Drive the hips forward, lean towards the foot, or For balance, keep your hands on your couch or chair and just sit into this lunging pose. 10 seconds on each. Then we switch to the other leg. And once again, we either sit back for 10 seconds or we reach to the further ankle for 10 seconds. You're gonna rotate between each. That's another minute. We're at 3.5 minutes. If you want to do them both at the same time, you can. You'll just spread your feet out about shoulder width. And either, if you can, you touch the floor or put your hands on a high bench and bring your head to your hands. I have some clients with very, very poor balance, and this will allow them to focus more on the stretch and less on the issues with the balance. So here, 10 seconds. Just get your hands down to the floor or hands on a higher object and come up. And you'll repeat this 3 times. We're now at 4 minutes. And then finally, for the glute, we have 2 options. We can just look like a, basic pose, like we're reading a newspaper, we're tying our shoes. The object is to tighten and loosen this glute. So not tighten, to loosen this tight glute. All you need to do in a very basic pose is grab and brace your knee and your foot and pull your chest, almost like you're trying to look over your shin. Just take deep breaths and you'll feel the stretch coming through the back of the hip. 3 rounds, 10 seconds on each side. Took 5 minutes to do this basic stretching routine if you did each one for a 10-second count. Account for some transitions and slow breathing, call it 6 or 7 minutes. If you want a more advanced version of this stretch to get deeper into that stretching position, you can look it up. It's called a modified pigeon stretch. And what you'll do is you'll start in a lunging position and the forward knee is going to come down to the ground. And from here, you're going to drive your hips into the floor here. And if you can, bring your forearms to the floor and try to get your nose to your knee. You have to make sure that you don't just rock your weight to one side and put all your weight off to the side. And that would look like this. So here's the correct stretch. My glute is up off of the ground and I'm forward. The lazy version would be coming across. This will just put the stretching position up into your spine and not into the glutes that are creating the tension. And again, 10 seconds on each leg. So forward leg, try to spread out your hips and drive your hips into the floor. And as you can, just break yourself down and get your nose to your knee. This is just a very basic flow of stretches that I use when I wake up in the morning. Throughout the day, if my legs are tight, as I sit at a desk, or before I go to bed. That way my hips can stay loose, my hamstrings and glutes, my quads, they can all work together. So I have better technique when I'm lifting weights. And also it releases tension from my knees and my lower back by getting the muscles to relax. This is the final stretch everyone knows, just a basic toe touch. Do your best to keep your knees straight. If you bend your knees, it's just too hard. It'd be better to reach for an elevated surface, and with each deep breath, just descend and relax into the stretch. And with each stretch, you get a little lower until before you know it, your hands are on the floor. Also, you can stretch your calves by putting your feet up or your hands up on a higher platform and your foot back. You can just press the back heel into the ground. So if I want to stretch my left calf, I'm going to push that heel into the ground while I maintain a low posture. And if I want to get a deeper stretch, I will push my hips towards the floor. If I feel my heel is starting to rise, I don't need to push the stretch any further. The muscle is stretching as much as it can right now, and it's going to start lifting. At that point, you're exaggerating the stretch. So make sure you stretch your legs. These carry you for a lifetime. A lot of tension in the legs can prevent you from making a lot of progress in the gym. And if that's not the concern, all the tension in your legs can create a lot of joint pain in the knees and up your lower back, which can continue to exacerbate over time to where you actually create real long-term problems. So stay flexible no matter your goals. You should always be able to be mobile. You should always be able to squat. You should always be able to sit down in a low position and rock yourself around and have enough balance to stay down here. My 75-year-old grandfather can still do it after getting multiple injuries racing motorcycles back in his day. Also, what I tell all my clients, babies cannot walk until they can squat. You need the balance to be able to stand up from a crawling position to be able to start walking. So really make sure, no matter what your goals are in the gym, you maintain your coordination and you maintain your flexibility. It'll make you last a whole lot longer and it'll make life more enjoyable. Hope you guys got something from this.